Lesson 28 in Algebra 1 is called Fractional Parts of Numbers. And sometimes when we deal with things in everyday life or even things in the math classroom, fractions come up. Every number is just not a easy to use number. Some things are fractions. And so we got to be able to work with fractions and utilize them. And let's get right into this. Let's take a look at example 1. And the problem says 4/3 of what number is 64? Now notice as I read that, I kind of emphasized the word, let me change this, the word of, the word what, and the word is. Now in math, there's certain words that mean certain things. Now this is something that you want to write down in your notes for lesson 28. And I call these types of problems of what is problems because those key words are so important. In math, the word of simply means to multiply. And the word what represents a variable or a letter. And the word is represents an equal sign. And if you remember that, you can really make these problems really easy. So again, the word of in math means to multiply. So we replace the word of with a multiplication symbol. We replace the word what with a letter or a variable. And we replace the word is with an equal sign. So I can take this problem and I can rewrite it like this. I can say 4/3 of times what, replace the word what with a letter, and it doesn't matter what letter, I'll use A. So 4/3 of what number is 64? And all I've done is I've taken a word problem and I've written it as a math problem. Again, using the words of, what, and is. Now let's solve this problem. So again, our age-old question, let's look on the side that the letters on A. What are they doing to A? They're multiplying it by 4/3. So we're going to do the inverse of that and divide both sides by 4/3. And if you multiply by 4/3 and divide by it, they cancel out. So A is left. Now what I got to figure out is what 64 divided by 4/3 is, which means 64 times 3/4. Now you can cross cancel, and I'm going to erase, I'll just try to rewrite over this, but first of all I'm going to check to see if I can divide 64 by 4. And it looks like I can. And the answer on that is 16. So I'll divide both these by 4, leaving a 16. Now take 16 times 3, and I get 48. So A is equal to 48. So let's go back to the question, the original problem. 4/3 of what number is 64? Well, 4/3 of 48 is actually 64. Now, how can that be? How can I take 4/3 of a number and get a bigger number? Well, what's 4/3? That's a number bigger than 1. Remember, if I took 1 times 48, I'd get 48. So if I took 48 times a number bigger than 1, I'd get a bigger number. So it makes sense. Okay, example 2. I'm going to underline the key words of, what, is. And I'm going to rewrite this, replacing those key words with what they mean. So 3 1/5 of times what number, I'll use n this time, is 48. Now, what are they doing? Let's solve this for n. They're multiplying n by 3 1/5, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3 1/5. And these cancel. Now I'm going to figure out what 48 divided by 3 1/5 is. Or in other words, 48 divided by 16/5. Or in other words, 48 times 5/16. Now I can divide 16 and 48 by 3. And then multiply 3 times 5, and I get 15. So 3 1/5 of 15 is 48. Now what's 3 times 15? That's 45, right? And we're taking a little bit more. So it makes sense that 3 1/5 of 15 would be 48. Okay, example 3. Again, I'm going to underline my key words. What of is. So what fraction, what stands for a letter, I'll use F for fraction. What fraction of 60 is 48? All right, let's solve it for F. They're multiplying by 60. I'll divide by 60. Cancels. Now, an absolute no-no here is that I cannot take a calculator and take 48 divided by 60 and get a decimal. They're asking for a fraction. So I have to just reduce this fraction. Start by dividing by 2. You could keep on dividing by 2. Now, something I see right away is you could divide both these by 12. 4 and 5. And I'm just going to check to make sure that 12 times 5, and that is 60. So my fraction is 4/5. So what fraction of 60 is 48? Well, if I take 4/5 of 60, I am going to get 48. And you can check it that way. All right, last example, example 4, of what is. So 4 1/2 of 220 is what number? N. So how am I going to get N? Well, all I got to do is take 4 1/2 times 20. So here you could take 4.5 times 220 and make it easy on a calculator. Or, remember when you multiply mixed numbers, change them to improper fractions. So I have, 9 halves times 220 is going to give me N. Now I can divide both these by 2, leaving 110, and then take your 9 times 110, 990. Now I'm going to check that. I did that pretty quick. So 4 1/2 of 220. So not only are you going to take 4 times 220, but you're going to take 4 1/2 times 220, and it makes sense that I'm going to get a number, in the 990 range. So this topic was called fractional parts of numbers.